Ladies and gentlemen, the friends of rock and roll. If you fall, then we kill by you. We'll give you a roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rather slit your throat than write a brand new song. Yeah. If you feel like us, don't think that you think twice.
Greetings, everyone. It's time for Road to Ruin. Me and Randy coming at you, our monthly show. How's it going, Randy?
Good, man. Good. Just hanging tight up here in Connecticut in the rain. We had some pretty bad thunderstorms today, and dodged a bullet where I am in Connecticut, but part of the state got demolished with like hail and trees falling on houses, and yeah, it was pretty brutal earlier.
I have some news on the health and safety front. I finally am scheduled for vaccination. Finally.
Oh, good, man.
Yeah.
Good.
You know, tomorrow morning I have to drive up to Newark and get my first vaccine shot. And on May 13th, I get my second. And then that's it.
That's awesome, man. I got my second shot this past Friday. And fortunately, I had zero side effects or symptoms or residual illness. Because some other people I know on their second shot have gotten, pretty ill for like 24 hours. It was pretty much the exact same as my first shot. I had like a sore arm for like 48 hours, and I had zero symptoms. I didn't even have a headache or anything. So I feel like I got pretty lucky. So, yeah, pretty happy, dude. And I got like 5 more days to go, and I'll be the 2 weeks past, we were supposedly in the window of being pretty safe. So glad to hear got your schedule.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, man. I'm a little bit disappointed in the state of New Jersey. Everyone I know has been vaccinated already, like fully. And they fucking made me wait till the bitter end, man. I'm kind of bummed out about that.
Yeah, that does suck, dude. I was screaming and yelling at the state of Connecticut, which I do often about many different things anyway. I'm not a big fan of the state, even though I lived here most of my life. But I was able, my wife was able, with her hard work, was able to get me an appointment the day I became eligible, like my age group.
Uh-huh.
So it was pretty good, because I fall under the quote-unquote essential worker umbrella that they created when this shit started, and just as I suspected, like when the chips are on the table, like the essential worker thing, it's just a joke. They didn't vaccinate essential workers first. At the last minute, they were like, "Oh, we're just going to do it by age," and their excuse was it's too hard to determine who's an essential worker. So I was pretty pissed off about that, but at the end of the day, I was able to get in sooner than I thought, so it's all good. I don't know what's going on down there, man. I thought New Jersey was on top of that kind of stuff.
For everyone else, they are. They don't give a fuck about me, though. Like I'm like, I'm probably one of the more important guys down here in Jersey. And they're making me wait till like the last group. You know what I mean?
I think you're one of the most important people in New Jersey, to me anyway.
Oh, but everyone I know in New York, this is like one of the only times I still wish I lived in Brooklyn, because like most people I know, like Mike Scandato, he's fully vaccinated, man. Everyone I know has been got both shots already.
Yeah, I'm not letting any info out that anyone really cares about, but in a few weeks, our mutual friend Jeff will be coming out here for a visit from LA, and me and him will be fully vaccinated. He's fully vaccinated as well, which is cool.
Yeah, and we both heard about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least
Jeff had a rough time with it, I guess.
Yeah, at least I'll have had my first vaccine, my first shot. You know what I mean? By the time, because I'll be going up there to see you guys, and we're gonna record a bunch of shit episode wise. So, Yeah, I'll have had my first vaccine, and my second one is scheduled for the 13th of May. So, you know, I'll be somewhat protected, from my
Well,
understanding.
what's cool is the way, like, you know, where we record at my house, I can just pop open a window, put a chair out there for you, and you can
I could sit
right outside
outside.
the window. Yeah,
I appreciate that. You know, I mean, whatever, man. Be that way.
We should probably let people know. Unfortunately, you know, we were able to do the first 2 episodes of the new show, Road to Ruin, in person, but this third one we had to pull the over the phone deal just because of scheduling issues, which we're going to have to do from time to time.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, totally. But moving forward, we're trying to, you know, do everything in person. And for any of you guys who listen to Necromaniacs, the other show that I do with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid, Mike and I are gonna move to back to an in-person podcasting system over the next few weeks. We're probably going to do a couple more over the phone, but probably starting sometime next month, we're going to be doing them in person again, which is just, that's like the real deal, man. You know, it's like over the phone's cool, but I think you can agree that having us both in the same room again was just way cooler and way more comfortable, I think, and just better quality, you know?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, sonically, it's always better, like, you know, when we're in the same room. But I feel like there's just a different, you just feed off each other a bit more. Like, you know, you can, like, look at each other. And, like, it's easier to not step on each other, you know, when we're trying to finish sentences and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's always better in person, man. I think moving forward, you know, we might have to do a few of these over the phone, but I think we got some ideas, some good ideas, or we'll be able to maybe knock out more than one episode at a time, too.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally. We used to do that, I remember. That was on the old Metal Matters days. Yeah.
Back when we were young.
So have you been checking out anything new this month or this week or whatever? Anything
as far as music?
Anything, music, movies?
I haven't watched. Well, you know, I watched the movie we're about to cover, and then I went back and watched the original Bad Lieutenant from 1992, just to kind of get myself warmed up, you know, for Port of Call, New Orleans, which was cool. I've seen both these movies, but I've seen both of them when they were released, and one of them was in 1992. So, you know, I didn't remember a lot about the original. And the second one, I definitely was good to go back and watch it because I only remember bits and pieces. You know, even I was, 11 years ago at this point that came out, 2009. So, yeah, man. As far as new, I haven't watched any new movies. I tried to start watching that QAnon documentary.
Oh yeah, the one that's on Max, HBO Max.
HBO Max. Yeah, man, I couldn't even get through the first episode. I just got no tolerance for those fucking people, man. I can't even hear it. I can't listen to them. It just gets me upset. You know, it fucking drives me crazy. These people are so fucking stupid.
I was fascinated by it, man. I watched the entire thing. You know, I watched all the whole season or whatever. It's like, well, I think like 6 episodes or something.
Maybe I need to go back because some other people have told me to, like, what did it pay off to stick through it? Like, to keep your attention the whole time? Or?
I mean, I was angry through the whole, you know. I mean, I wasn't.
That was my problem.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. It wasn't like there's any redemption of any. You know, it's not like the good guys win in the end or anything like that. But I was just fascinated by it just because I don't know, man. As the months go by, I feel like I need to just gather intel on the enemy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that seems like a good source of it from what I've seen.
No, totally. And yeah, you know, well, whatever. I mean, it's so fucking nuts though. Like just the people involved in that like whole operation. You know, like the 3 main players, fucking crazy, right? Insane.
Oh yeah. I mean. Oh, one thing this was a couple weeks ago. But one thing I did watch was, do you get the Peacock network? It's like another streaming service.
Maybe it might be part of my Sling service. I don't know what is it exactly.
There's a 6-part documentary on John Wayne Gacy called "The Devil in Disguise."
Huh. Okay.
I'm a sucker for these crime documentary series, docu-series about serial killers and stuff like this, you know. And this one was done really well. It's probably one of the better ones I've ever seen. And I wasn't expecting much with it being on the Peacock network, but I guess it doesn't really matter what anything's on anymore, you know. It's like
it doesn't. Yeah.
It was done really well, man. That kept my attention. There's like 6 parts. They're like range from like 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. That was great, you know.
Well, as you know, I'm ultra interested in that kind of stuff, and I'll see if I have it. I mean, maybe does that used to be like NBC or something like that, like the Peacock network?
Yeah, I think they're behind it for sure. It just popped up one day on my cable service as like right next to Amazon Prime and all that. It was like Peacock. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I clicked on it. It was movies and shit. And this was like original programming for that. And it was really good.
Yeah, it's crazy how stuff just like pops up, these new platforms and everything. It's like every day there seems to be something new. Like, for example, I'm getting deep into the Arrow streaming app, which we talked about briefly. There's that the Mentors documentary, and a lot of just like if you're familiar with the Arrow Blu-ray releasing label, it's material that they have licensed already as Blu-rays, and I don't think their whole catalog is on there, but a lot of the stuff is material that they've already released as a Blu-ray. So there's a lot of that stuff on there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I have a lot of those Arrow Blu-ray reissues. I have a bunch of those. They do a lot of cool stuff on it too, like a lot of classic 70s and 80s type, mainly horror, but they do other stuff too.
Yeah. There's a lot of westerns on there. There's kind of super dark westerns, like
oh, nice.
The Italian ones. Like, I don't know. I like a lot of that stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that stuff's fun, man. I don't. It's been a while since I've checked out any of that stuff, but a lot of that stuff I've checked out. It's fun.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I've been getting really deep into the new "I Hate God" record, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A history of nomadic behavior. Fucking great record.
Yeah, I don't want to say I've won that one out already, but when you asked what I've been listening to new, it's like the day that came out, I just ran that thing for for a couple weeks straight, and then I pre-ordered the vinyl and got that in. So I've been heavily into that as well. Although I'm taking a little break right now, so I don't get sick of it. But I really, really dig that. What's your thoughts on it?
I love it. I mean,
yeah.
The thing that really strikes me about it is just when you think you really got "I Hate God" figured out, you know what to expect from them. They give you a record like this, which is a lot. It's different, It's
It is.
It's this. I mean, obviously it's "I Hate God," so there's like a certain, there's like the Mike 9 vocals, which only that's unique to him. Like his vocal delivery and his lyrics and, the signature Jimmy Bower guitar riffing, but it has like a very, it's like blues, Black Flag, and Flipper all at the same time. You know what I mean?
I was hoping you were going to say Black Flag, because that was like my immediate thing after my first listen. I was like, wow, this was like side 2 My War, moving forward from there, slipping in that kind of later Black Flag stuff. Totally feel that heavy. And then, it's also could sound pretty different because it's the first record without Joey on drums. And it's also the first record without Brian Patton on the second guitar.
Right. With only Bower on guitars. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely, I don't know how big of that, plays into the feel, but it definitely feels a bit different in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite bands of all time, but like, it's nice when one of your favorite bands can change it up a little and you still love it. I still thought it was an amazing record.
Yeah. And it's innovative too for them. I mean, it's like, no one sounds like "I Hate God." Like they got their own distinctive thing. And there's a lot of bands that try, there's a lot of bands that, You know, like I Hate God is the band that people compare other bands to. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
oh
totally.
yeah, these guys
Yeah,
have this like I Hate God thing going on. You know, it's not like you can say who I Hate God sound like. It's you can say that
right.
I can feel these different elements combining to make I Hate God. You know.
Sure.
But yeah, it's fantastic, man. I love it. It's I've been listening to it a lot, along with the new Cannibal Corpse record too, which features my friend Eric Rutan, which is really stoked, man. If you think about him for a minute, he was in Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, Ripping Corpse, and Hate Eternal. It's like,
yeah, they're pretty heavy hitters, man.
Yeah. You know,
Sure.
and aside from his like prolific career as a producer, as a record producer, you know.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, that's cool that he's part of the band now, like full on. I got that's on my short list to check out. I have not checked that out. You're probably not a fan, but I've been really digging the new Bongzilla record that came out.
I didn't know they had
Tuesday.
a record out, actually. Oh.
Yeah. It came out on 4/20. Can you believe it? Like,
I don't believe it.
You don't believe it. I mean, if you're into them at all, if you're into any of their old records, it's definitely worth checking out. It's cool. They're a power trio now. I guess one of the guitar players left, and Mule Boy, the singer, he moved over to bass. He plays bass and sings now. And you know, it sounds definitely like classic Bongzilla, but there's some cool, more atmospheric kind of stuff on there. And it's kind of, you know, along the same lines of what I Hate God did. It's slightly different. You know, you can hear that it's Bongzilla, but there's definitely some other stuff going on. I've always been a sucker for them, man. You know, a lot of people kind of, I think, just disregard them because of the name and stuff too. But I always thought they were a cool band.
Are they still on Relapse, or they work with a different label now?
I know Relapse reissued like all their stuff a few years ago when they kind of got back together after a long hiatus. But the new record is on a label called Heavy Psych Sounds. It has been putting out some pretty cool stuff too. They put out a couple of, I think they're reissues actually, of this band called Sonic Flower, which was the bass player for Church of Misery's band after Church of Misery kind of disbanded for a while. And that Sonic Flower band recorded a couple of records. It's like instrumental, kind of more of a 70s psychedelic kind of thing than like a sludgy doom thing like Church of Misery. There's some other cool stuff they're doing on that label. They're doing that new band called Stoner with Nick Olivari and Brant Bjork. Some other stuff too. But yeah, it's on that label. It's not on Relapse.
Oh, that's cool. And it's you know, it's funny. I was supposed to interview Nick Olivari for Metal Matters. The dude just fucking totally flaked on multiple occasions. We never actually spoke.
That's unfortunate because I've always been a fan of him and his music and stuff, and it would have been cool. I don't hear a lot of interviews with him. It would have been cool if that would have materialized. But, you know, from what I hear from the rumor mill, like he's kind of a wild card, you know?
Yeah, it's my understanding as well. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
so for this episode, we're doing something a little different. Instead of talking about music, we're talking about a movie. And we're talking about the Werner Herzog Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. Which is like, most people would think that's kind of an odd choice of a movie to talk about. You know, but how did we actually arrive at this decision? That's what I want to know.
Pretty random. I was in my basement after work, like on a Saturday night, having a couple beers or something. We hadn't really discussed what we were doing. We knew we were going to have to knock one out over the phone before we actually got together. And I don't think we knew what we were doing. And you just like threw it out there. You're like, hey, have you seen this movie? And I was like, yeah, a long time ago. And then like, I think it was left at that for like 2 days. And then you're like, hey, do you want to do this movie? Like, cover this movie? And I was like, yeah, fuck it. I don't know. So you got to ask yourself that question.
Okay.
I don't know how that came how that came up in your mind, or you just rewatched it and thought it'd be cool, or what? But
No, I haven't. I mean, obviously, I watched this over the last couple of days, but I haven't seen
Right.
this movie since 2009 when it came out.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know how this came back on your radar, but I thought it was a cool idea because kind of the idea of doing the Road to Ruin thing was tackle some different things outside of the stuff we usually do with music. So I thought it was a cool idea, and then it's just such a fucking whacked out movie, and I even think it's kind of crazy that Werner Herzog did this movie.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, that's kind of, I guess, what I think I was thinking about this film, and just trying to make sense of it because, I love Abel Ferrara. I'm a fan of like all of his work, and to some extent,
Sure.
I think all of his stuff is great. I mean, I think all of his stuff is great, but to varying degrees, obviously. And I think
Right.
I had just watched The Addiction, the movie with Lily Taylor in it, the vampire one.
Okay. Yep.
And of course, I think probably one of the first movies I've ever seen by him was, well, actually, the first movie I saw by him was Driller Killer, and
That's great.
but I wasn't aware. Like I saw that when I was a kid, like in high school, because it was like, oh, the Driller Killer, and it's got this punk rock band in it, and
Right.
watching it without any real awareness of where that movie fit into the world of movies and cinema and whatever. And then later on, I caught The Bad Lieutenant, and that's what really drew me in with Abel Ferrara. And then I realized that he made the Driller Killer, and I was like, oh wow, that's fucking crazy. So that movie is such an important film to me. The Abel Ferrara version, it's like right up there with Taxi Driver as far as like just like dark, like over the top kind of studies and desperation and darkness and all that stuff. And then when I found out in 2009 that Werner Herzog was now, this is the thing. I'm not going to say that they're pretty adamant about saying it's not necessarily a remake. All right. So
Right.
when Werner Herzog was involved with a film that shared the name of Abel Ferrara's film, I was intrigued by it. I remember we had gotten like, when I was more into the, film production stuff around that time. And like, I had happened upon like a burn of this film, like a DVD burn of it. And that was, I was given this to check out. And I was like, man, this is so fucking out of control. And we'll get into why. But no one really talks about this movie, but I think like in the same way that I can go back and listen to those Black Sabbath records that came out in the 90s and enjoy those. I was wondering if I would be able to enjoy this movie as a standalone thing. And I have to say that it does stand alone. If you forget that Abel Ferrara, if you like divorce it from Abel Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant and watch this thing on its own, it really is quite a fucking experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, they couldn't be like more different. Yeah, matter of fact, like a few minutes before like we started recording, I was texting with Jeff Kashid, your partner there, and Necro.
He's more your partner than mine, man. Like you've known him way longer.
No. I don't want him. He's yours. We're just chatting about the movie a little bit. He was just saying, I was like, yeah, I think the first one's, pretty. I would say I probably like the first one better as a film,
Yeah.
And he's like, that's apples and oranges. And he's right. It is. It's like they're very, subject matter wise, they're very similar, but as films, they're very different. The way they're approached. I mean, just take Harvey Keitel as the lead versus Nicolas Cage. I think I'm not a big Nicolas Cage fan. Never have been. Matter of fact, I think he's pretty awful. Although I'm a fan of a lot of movies he's in. Where Harvey Keitel, I think, is like, a master of his craft.
Absolutely. And Yeah, I think I don't have the same disdain for Nicolas Cage, but I do think that his career is very hit or miss depending on who's directing him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he must work cheap. That's all I can think.
Well, I know that he,
I don't know.
if you believe the things you read, he has developed a lot of debts, and he has to work all the time to pay down these rich guy expenditures he has.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, just before we get into, I just want to drop some information about the production of the movie and all that. So it came out November 20th, 2009. Directed by Werner Herzog, who you all should know. He's got a huge filmography. Some notable stuff is the Grizzly Man documentary. His remake of Nosferatu, the Vampire.
It's great.
Yeah. Written by William Finkelstein, and he's done mostly television work like L.A. Law, and he's American. Okay, I'm drawing attention to the fact that he's American because there's something I want to talk about once we actually start talking about the movie. Produced by Edward Pressman, and he actually is the same producer of Abel Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant, believe it or not.
Really? That's
blasphemy, man. Blasphemy. The movie's fucking long. It's 122 minutes long. And that's long.
It is long.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I put it on, I was like, wow, this is longer than I thought.
Yeah. And then it's got a pretty well-known cast. We got Nick Cage as the lead in the film, Terrence McDonough. We all know Nick Cage from a billion things. He played Sailor in Wild at Heart. He was in Color Out of Space. He was most recently in those movies. Mandy is another one. Eva Mendes, who was back in 2009, she was kind of like a big up and coming starlet, I think, right?
Yeah, she was. What year did 25th Hour come out?
I don't know, but I remember it was somewhere. It was before that, I think. But yeah, it was. We haven't really heard too much from her lately, but she's around, I guess. Val Kilmer, who I barely recognized in the movie at first. I was like, this motherfucker looks just like Val Kilmer, except he's shot, But I'm like, oh wait, that is Val Kilmer,
right?
You know what I mean? He's like, he looks fucked up in this movie, right?
He looks a little heavy, man. He looks a little heavy.
Yeah.
He looks weird. I agree.
He's come a long way from his role in Heat, where he was like a lean and mean version of himself.
Maybe stop doing coke after Heat and then just start eating more or something. You know?
Maybe. Brad Dourif, an actor's actor, is in this, and he plays like a bookie. Of course, we know him from a lot of. He's like a fucking. He played Chucky, Child's Play. He was in Exorcist 3. He was in Blue Velvet. One of my favorite movies of all times. And
great.
This might not resonate with too many people, but I'm a big Flannery O'Connor fan, and he played Hazel Motes in the film version of Wise Blood, the Flannery O'Connor novel. So that's kind of important to me.
That's a great movie too.
Yeah. We have Fairuza Balk, who has a very small part, but a very impactful part, if you guys get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Some lesser known people who became fairly well known, not as a result of this film, but over the next 10 years, we got Shea Wiggum, who you can enjoy his work on a variety of different HBO series. One of which is one of my favorite of all time is True Detective season 1. He was in Boardwalk Empire, and he was also in the most recent Perry Mason thing that's going on. And Michael Shannon, who was also in Boardwalk Empire as well as a bunch of other movies. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting cast. Definitely with Werner Herzog directing and all these people involved. I mean, there was definitely some kind of budget put together for this film.
Right. A lot of names.
Yeah.
A lot of names. Don't you think it's odd that he directed this film? I mean, I'm not an expert on his work, but what I know of it, I don't know that he's done anything like this. It just seems like so out of his wheelhouse. Like,
There's a lot of things about this film that don't make any sense to me, definitely. And I mean, when I remember being like completely blown away that Werner Herzog was involved in this movie. I thought it was like a joke. Yeah. I thought it was like some fake like gag that was circulating, that because he's not known as like a hard crime, like he's never done anything like this. He's like a very highbrow, like European sort of dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And that's what like threw me off. I was like, okay, it's just bizarre. It's bizarre.
Yeah. But of course, Abel Ferrara had problems with this. You know what I mean? He was very upset that they were using the Bad Lieutenant title, and kind of I think the troublemaker behind this whole thing is William Finkelstein, the guy who wrote it, because he submitted a draft of a screenplay to Herzog with the title Bad Lieutenant. And, obviously Finkelstein knew about Ferrara's film that came out in like 92 or 93 or something like that. But he swore, and Herzog wasn't aware of any of this stuff. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. He's not, that he didn't know about Abel Ferrara or the film,
Right.
And then Finkelstein was like, no, it's not a remake. But I guess Herzog insisted that they change the name. See, Finkelstein was all gung-ho to go to film, to go out to the presses as the Bad Lieutenant, which is fucking nuts, right?
Like not Bad Lieutenant 2, but just at like, interesting.
That's a fucked up move, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar in some ways to what's happening to some of these horror franchises like Halloween and Friday the 13th and stuff like that. On the surface, but I mean, this sounds a little more like deliberate almost,
Well, what it reminds me of too is how the Italians, when horror films would try to hijack like American films somehow, like Zombie and Night of the Living Dead and Zombie 2.
Right.
Night of the Living Dead came out in Italy as Zombie, and then the Fulci film Zombie 2 was like trying to like hijack the the buzz around Night of the Living Dead. So that's the beginning of this little narrative I've developed in my head about this whole film, about how it's like a very Italian European thing that's going on with this movie in some ways. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I'm like this. I started the second time I watched it and I started reading about what was going on. I started thinking about how a lot of this reminds me of like the kind of stuff that went on with like Fulci and like Mario Bava and all that, and those films, those great films that came out, and they were trying to, like frame them against successful films and kind of like grab some of the heat off of that. And that's kind of what this feels like to me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, sure.
So they negotiated over the title, and they came up with Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, which is like, there's something about that title that just fucking makes me laugh too. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's funny,
Yeah, it's like so specific and like kind of like longer than it needs to be. It's like confusing almost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But one major change is that they moved it from New York City to New Orleans. And then of course, this is like, I guess, in an attempt to kind of like create their own story, separate, and put some distance between this and the Ferrara's, film, which is like probably a good idea because I think back in the 90s when Bad Lieutenant came out, that was like a breakaway film for Abel Ferrara. That put him on the map with a lot of people, really.
Sure. They didn't do such a great job then because, like, I mean, the premise is obviously the same, and then, like, there's the gambling kind of connection, obviously. I mean, a lot of the narrative is exactly the same. So, I mean, they didn't do the best job of separating it from the original, I don't think.
I mean, basically, it is the same story. Some of the set pieces are different, but there's also a lot of the set pieces that are identical to it. I mean, it's about a corrupt cop, but where Keitel's version of the character gets murdered at the end of the film, Nick Cage makes it out alive, though still unredeemed. You know what I mean?
Promoted.
Yeah, but still he's still a piece of shit, though. You know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I don't even know where to start. There's like the opening, like, kind of thing with the snakes crawling, through the murky post Katrina ravaged New Orleans water. Reminds me of the record cover from our mutual friend Mateo's band Kavara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Right? They have a snake, like a viper or whatever, on the record cover. Yeah.
Yes. As soon as I seen it, I was like, "Oh man, this should be a Kavara video right here." Well, makes sense.
One of the things I was thinking about with this movie, and I think maybe because I recently watched like a bunch of Italian movies, and the fact that Herzog's European, and this movie, it feels like one of those like late 70s like Italian films that is supposed to be taking place in the United States, right? But all the characters are Europeans, and it's not shot in the United States. You know what I mean? Like you'll watch the
New York Ripper. Or something.
Yeah, like you watch like a Dario Argento film or a Lucio Fulci movie, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's supposed to take place in Massachusetts, and it's like the family is like a British guy and like an Italian lady, and like and it's all dubbed and everything, and there's no.
Right.
And it's obviously not Massachusetts. It's like, somewhere in Italy, like Trieste, Italy or something. And even the dialogue is like alien. It's not like American vernacular, you know what I mean? It's not like a colloquial sort of thing. It's obviously a European impression of what they think American people are like,
Right. Well, I mean, that's where Nicolas Cage, like, it's one of my complaints about him, where I think he drops the ball almost every time, is that it seems like as through the course of movies he's in, the way he speaks and his dialogue and his voice just like kind of changes. Even like the last movie I watched, and I know you and Jeff covered this on Necro, was Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's intentional. Like, it seemed like halfway through the movie, he almost started talking like Donald Trump.
Well, actually, I have an answer for that because.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
That actually was intentional because in Color Out of Space, he was playing like himself, and then there was in the very beginning of the movie they were referencing his father, right? So as he was coming under the influence of the color, he would slip into these expressions of what his father was like, you know what I mean? So the Donald Trump voice was like his dad, and his other voice was him,
Okay, I didn't catch on to that.
Yeah, that was something that was talked about if you read, things with Richard Stanley and. But I get what you're saying, like he's got a weird delivery, and in this movie, it just. That's what that feeds into what I was saying though, but the most perplexing thing about it is the guy who wrote this is American, like the dialogue is written by an American, right? Who you would imagine? I mean, he wrote for L.A. Law, right? Which takes place in L.A. and he's familiar with how American people speak, you know, but everything about this movie, even like the you know, there's like the titles and stuff, like there would be like, you know, post Katrina New Orleans, you know, it's like the New York Ripper or something like that. There'd be like New York City 1985 or something like that, you know. It reminded me of like a fucking Italian horror film, just from the very beginning, and then the very forced like vernacular and like some of the like one of my favorite scenes. It's like, we can get to that later, but it's just like there's a scene where like it's like so fucking out there, and I'm like, who the hell would ever think to do this, you know? But it's hard to believe that it's like a guy who wrote for TV that came up with this script, you know?
I wonder if you're thinking about the scene that I'm thinking about right now.
Which one?
Like you said, we'll get
which one is
the
it?
iguana scene. The iguana scene.
That's another one, but there's additional one that it's like, all right. I mean, we're not going to go through the movie beat by beat. So anyway, it's like Nicolas Cage is a cop. He does his job well, right? But he has an injury to his back, and that's when we see him descend into the world of drug addiction, because you know they and this is actually a common story with a lot of people. Like I know a lot of people who get addicted to heroin because they like to party, but I also know a handful of people who have had injuries where they start with oxy and then they start, you know, getting into like, you know, being full on addicts, you know?
Sure. Yeah. That's a common thing.
So he's taking pain medication, and they shift a few years or 6 months down the line, and they show him rolling up to a crime scene. And he's like, does a key bump of cocaine, you know what I mean? And it seems like cocaine is his drug of choice, you know?
Right.
So that's how he gets, addicted to drugs. And, but, you know, he's got Eva Mendes plays like this high level prostitute, this high dollar prostitute that that's like his girlfriend. And unlike Harvey Keitel's character in this, he's not married. So, you know, he's just out there in the streets slinging dick. You know what I mean?
Going buck wild.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the setting for the story. Similar to Abel Ferrara's version of the film, he has a gambling problem, and that's where Brad Dourif comes in, and he's his bookie, and he starts digging a deep hole for himself of debts, and that's part of him getting out of this whole thing. And there's a murder case that he's involved with. They're investigating the murder of these African immigrants, and the connection to a drug overlord. And that's played by a famous, I think the guy who plays the drug guy is like some kind of famous rapper or something like that.
Exhibit.
Exhibit. Yeah, he plays Big Fate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Not the kind of rap I'm into, but yes, I guess he was pretty popular.
Yeah. I don't really know much about him. I got to be honest. I'm not trying to be like cool or anything like that. I just, I think after maybe the late 90s, I kind of dropped off with my hip hop stuff, you know?
Yeah, I was even earlier than that. So that's why, I don't know. It's just not someone that was ever on my radar, but I know the name. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this movie? I think I've said some, I put my thoughts out there, but what are your ideas about this movie?
What do I even say? Well, first of all, I really enjoyed the movie. I watched it twice. I watched it today, and I watched it last night. And I watched it originally when it came out, but I don't know if I may have fell asleep halfway through. I never finished watching it because I feel like I watched it for the first time. You know, although some of the scenes definitely came back to me, like the first scene, because they go back to this kind of similar situation where the young couple's coming out of the nightclub called the Gators Retreat.
Yeah.
And the scene that takes place in the parking lot.
Right.
So that definitely came back to me. I'm like, oh shit, I remember this. But dude, it's just like such a wild ride, and it doesn't it doesn't make any sense on the surface. Like I keep saying, with a guy like Werner Herzog, like directed this, because I'm a fan of the Nosferatu remake. I'm not an expert with his films. I've seen a few. I've seen the Grizzly Man documentary and stuff, and they're all like serious films. And this is just like, it's almost plays like you said, like some of those Italian movies that are set in America, or even like grindhouse stuff, but not that extreme, It's just it's so unhinged, dude. Like the original Bad Lieutenant is like you referenced Taxi Driver, and I feel like that's a great comparison. It's like Taxi Driver happening in the early 90s as opposed to, when the original Taxi Driver was based in 76 or something like that.
Yeah, somewhere like that.
Maybe a bit earlier. Yeah. So it definitely has that feel, but Port of Call, New Orleans, it's just like, it's just so fucking crazy. I mean, some of my complaints were it was definitely too long.
Says you.
In the whole... What's that?
Says you. I don't know. I was cool with that, but whatever.
Well, I feel like it was unnecessarily long. It was a lot of fun, it was like a crazy movie, but like I feel like it got bogged down with like the scenes with his father. And when he takes Eva Mendes, Frankie, his girlfriend, when he takes her out to his father's house, and like I feel like a lot of that just didn't need to be in there. Like it just could have been completely edited out. It was almost like no reason for it. And I felt like there was like 20 minutes worth of that. And I was like, why? It just seemed to slow the movie down a lot.
I agree with that. Yeah, I can see that point.
It was like that scene where like, he takes her out in the back and there's this like little like shed kind of thing where he says he used to hang out a lot as a kid, and he had found some silver spoon he dug up in the dirt and he hid it in there. And I'm like, well, what's the fucking point of this? Like, there was no point to any of it. And it was just like, it goes from him like fucking, fucking smoking crack and fucking some guy's girlfriend in front of him in a parking lot to like this like fairy tale of him like when he was a kid. It didn't fit with like the crazy narrative that was going on. It was just like seemed to really bog it down to me. That's kind of really my only complaint about the movie, though. Other than that, I thought it was a blast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The movie came out like 12 years ago at this point, 13 years ago. So I've gotten over my my issues with it being called Bad Lieutenant. You know what I mean? I mean, even Abel Ferrara and Werner Herzog were able to bury the hatchet over this too. You know what I mean? They were able to meet up, and Ferrara, they got together and they made peace. So, but yeah, for the longest time I was like, this is trash. You know what I mean? And then I think after, like I said, I went through this big stint of watching Italian films, and I was like, yeah, you know what, man? This reminds me a little bit of like that fucking Bad Lieutenant New Orleans version, And yeah, it's like sleazy. It's like a sleazy Euro version of an American movie. You know what I mean? Because I mean, there's nothing about it that seems like it took place in New Orleans. Like where Abel Ferrara's films, so New York. It's like, I mean, he's like a New York motherfucker, man. That guy, like, it's the whole film has this like very grimy, gritty, like New York vibe. Especially if you're someone who lived in the city or around, you can relate to some of the things that are in the film. They talk about the Cat Club and all, stuff like that. The chicks from New Jersey coming over to go wild, and then they run into the Harvey Keitel, and he fucking jerks off on their window and all that shit. Humiliates them.
I almost feel like they tried to like crowbar the whole New Orleans vibe in there a little too hard too. Like, I mean, the Katrina thing, whatever. I guess that was, I guess that makes sense in the story. But like, there's the accident on the highway with the alligators.
Yeah, but it was so heavy-handed though. It was like we somehow have to ground this in the city that's in the title, you know? Like,
Right.
other than that, you could have been fucking anywhere, man. It could have been Zurich or somewhere, you know what I mean? It could have been literally anywhere.
They could have got Tom G. Warrior.
Yeah.
Play,
you know, it could be Berlin. It could be, except I don't know if Germans get down like that, but it could have been literally any city. And that's why the Katrina thing and the alligator, you know, which I appreciate that, but you know, it's like there was nothing about it that seemed authentically like New Orleans to me, you know.
No, not at all. And the scene of the alligator. So he's rolling out to talk to the cop. There's a cop. His bookie there needs his favor. His daughter got a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
So he's rolling out to this accident scene to talk to the one of the head cops or whatever about fixing this ticket. And the accident is like, looks like a car, like fucking hit an alligator going like 1,000 miles an hour, and the fucking alligator is split in half. And then like, that's where Fairuza Balk's character gets introduced, because she's like working like the scene of this accident. And anyway, he's like trying to get this cop, you know, he's trying to get this cop to overturn this ticket. And the cop's like a real hard ass, you know, he's like, you're asking me to break the law. You know, he's like one of these fucking hardcore cops. But that whole scene, it was just so crazy. And then like they pan away, like kind of like to the tall grass on the side of the road, and you see the head of like a live alligator that's like not involved, like over, like watching what's going on. But the colors and everything kind of fucking change. And he's like alligators watching like him and Fairuza Balk like have a conversation. And I'm waiting for the alligator to like pounce, you know? They've got this fucking jaw open, and he's like, you know, he's almost like panting, like a rabid dog or something. And then it just completely goes away from it. It doesn't go anywhere. Just like, I'm like, that was just fucking bizarre. And then like they pan back one more time to the alligator that got hit in the road, and it's like on its back, and you see its front leg just like twitching. That whole scene was so insane. Like,
right.
What the fuck is going on?
And that's what made me think about these guys like Ruggero Deodato and like all these other fucking Italian people that make these movies that would have something like that in their movie just because.
I did not think about that when I was watching it, but now that you mention it, that makes total sense.
Yeah, it's like if you watch any number of Italian films, like had Italian horror films. I'm not talking about like Pasolini or like, you know what I mean? I'm talking about like Italian genre films. You know, it's like, what is it? House by the Cemetery, that Fulci movie. It's like, I still don't know what the fuck that movie is about. You know what I mean? And it's just like this impressionistic thing of like scenes and atmosphere. And that's what I feel like a lot of this, I kind of would rather Herzog actually went into that more, where it would just be this like, because like it turns out that there's a scene with iguanas, right? And it's Nicolas Cage's character so fucked up and hallucinating that they're not even actually there. He's seeing the iguanas.
That is my favorite scene in the movie, even though it's like, 40 seconds long. It's like they're like staking out from across the street this apartment, and it's weird because it's clearly like not where Nicolas Cage lives, but when he walks in, there's already two other cops in there. They're like looking out the window with the binoculars, and there's two fucking iguanas on the table, and Nicolas Cage walks in and he's like, "What the fuck are these iguanas doing on my coffee table?" It like doesn't make any sense. Like it's clearly not where he lives. And then the other cops are like, well, "We don't see any iguanas," which I think they're trying to say like Nicolas Cage is so fucked up, he's the only one that sees the iguanas. But then that breaks into this song, like this 70s soul song, "Release Me" by Johnny Adams, and that goes on for like an uncomfortable amount of time. And like there's this like close-ups of the iguana's face, and like they're spreading out their, they're around their necks and shit. And it's just like, it's like this total acid trip, psychedelic, and then it just goes away. It's so fucking bizarre, dude. I thought that was like my favorite scene in the movie, though. But like you were saying, I wish they would have pumped more of that into it. There wasn't enough of that. Once they introduced that with the alligator scene and that scene, I wish they would have did more of that.
Yeah, because even the film, like they use like I don't know anything about making films, but the look of the film is different too. You know, and that's what kind of I think.
Yeah, it's like grainy.
Yeah, it sets it off as like being kind of different. You know, so it's like maybe it's like a hallucination or whatever. And the fact that this like drugs play a centerpiece in this film, they should have employed those techniques more to make it trippier. I think, you know, and really set it apart from Abel Ferrara. You know.
I agree. Like once they open that door, man, they should have just kicked it open and like rolled with it. Because like, I mean, it's almost so odd because there's not enough of it. But maybe that's their thinking too. Like maybe they still want to try to keep it on the rails. But you know, and Nicolas Cage. Another thing, this isn't so much on him. This is intentional. It was fucking awesome. Like the fact that you notice he's the only cop, the only detective in the whole movie. He's got like a fucking giant Smith & Wesson 29, which is a 44 Magnum revolver, like tucked into his fucking front of his waistband. Like, you know, dude, that's not cops just don't roll like that. You know?
Well, he does, obviously. You know, he's not your average cop, I guess, man. I picked up on that too. I thought that was fucking awesome. I thought.
Yeah, I was reading because I wanted to try to figure out what kind of. I thought it was a 44 mag, but you can find out anything about guns in movies. So I just Googled it, and it's a Smith & Wesson 29. It's a 44 Magnum revolver. But there's a thing, and one of the things I was reading, I was like, and just by the way, just so you know, no law enforcement agency would ever let the cops roll around with this thing like unholstered. You know, it's like tucked right like by his dick. The fucking whole gun's hanging. Every scene in the movie, it looks like the gun's going to fall out of his pants. You know? Yeah. It's fucking, I'm like, he just looks so sloppy all the time. And I know that's intentional, but.
Didn't like some like basketball player or like football player like shoot himself at a club one night? Because he was wearing like sweatpants and he had like a 9 like stuck in the front of his like sweatpants or something.
Yeah, Plaxico Burress. He used to play for the New York Giants. It was like a couple years. They had won the Super Bowl, and it was like I think it was a year or two after they had won one of their Super Bowls. And he was rolling in some nightclub in New York. And he shot himself in the leg. I think he had a Glock. He didn't have a 44 fucking Magnum revolver like Dirty Harry. You know, I just think it's so fucking funny. He's just like he's constantly flashing it. You know, like. Remember how about the part where like his partner's interrogating the guy and he doesn't want him to do it, so he's in a rush, but he has to pick up his prescription or his fucking So he goes in and he's like storming the pharmacy, and then they call security, and this fucking security guard goes like, "What's going on?" And he's like fucking this 44 Magnum like ready to fall out of his fucking pants. Yeah, I just thought it was so fucking funny. I'm like, that's so over the top. Like most cops have their gun in a holster, you know, whether it be on their hip or the shoulder holster, like covered up, you know, like the detective style with the sports jacket. He's just got the thing tucked in the front of his pants. It's so fucking funny.
So the conflict in this film is, Frankie, played by Eva Mendes. You know, she's a hooker, all right, high class hooker, right? He rolls up, she's in a hotel room, and she's got a black eye, you know, and this is where we see Shea Wiggum. He's like some low-level guy who likes to beat up women. And and
that guy.
Man. Yeah, Nick Cage is like, you know, braces him up, and apparently he's connected, right? And then these like Goombas roll up. And that now there's a thing between Nicolas Cage and these like gangsters about, you know, money changing hands. You know, you leaned on our guy, you know, and this and that. So there's that conflict. So now Cage needs to come up with some amount of money to pay off these guys, you know. Around that same time, he's connecting himself with these drug dealers who are actually guilty of the murder that he's trying to solve. So he goes to work with them, as like he's gonna be like, yeah, you pay me X amount of dollars, and I give you some intel, and he gets pretty chummy with those guys. Okay, so the confrontation that happens towards the end of the film, and this is leading into one of my favorite scenes actually, is he's smoking crack with them at their the guy's exhibit at his mansion or whatever, his pad, smoking crack, That scene's so fucking nuts, man. And miraculously, the gangsters show up looking for Nicolas Cage's character, and there's a standoff. Okay, and we know that Exhibit's got this gun like under the table, and they shoot down like all of the gangsters, right? But now there's like, and this makes it even more like fucked up and European to me, is when he shoots the gun, there's like a woo, and like a fucking song starts, like some blues harmonica, like I don't even. They're like blowing away all these dudes, and then Nick Cage is like, and there's a guy like tap dancing or whatever, like another figment of Nicolas Cage's imagination. There's this dude tap dancing, right, or doing some sort of dance, and Nicolas Cage is like, shoot him again. He's like, I could see their soul dancing, right?
Right.
It's like they fill him full of lead, and then the tap dancer guy falls dead, right? It's like, who the fuck would come up with a scene like that? And that's what makes this movie enjoyable. Like, it's not just like some half-assed knockoff, cash in, money grab. You know what I mean? It actually does have its own thing, And if it wasn't called Bad Lieutenant, it was just called like, some other title, like Buck Wild in New Orleans or something like that.
Right.
I would be totally into it. I'd be like, yeah, this is great, man. It's like, it's got all this sleazy shit in it. It's like Nicolas Cage, like Fairuza Balk's in it for a minute, all this great stuff,
Yeah, dude, you're absolutely right. Like, I didn't, going into watching it this time, I think originally when I watched it, I was kind of setting my goals a little higher. not my goals, my expectations a little bit higher, based off Bad Lieutenant, the original. This time I went into this totally different, and it's just one of those movies that's a lot of fun. Like, if you're expecting like some great moment in film, it's not that, but it's so unhinged and so crazy. There's a couple things, like, you got a little ahead of me, but with the scenes, there's a couple of things, dude. That scene where the guy who's connected is, with Eva Mendes in the hotel room, and he roughs her up a little bit. You don't see it, but like, Nicolas Cage shows up at the hotel room with this kid who witnessed.
His witness,
like,
yeah.
Right, who's like, what, maybe a 14-year-old kid or something like that?
Yeah.
So he brings him along to this hotel in Biloxi where his hooker girlfriend is getting lumped up by this guy. He's like, just wait here a couple minutes. Like, so he's out in the hall. And he goes in and has this confrontation with the guy. And the dialogue with that guy, man, like, did you catch how weird that was? Where he's just like, whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa.
It's like a David Lynch dialogue or something. You know what I mean?
Totally. And then, like, you finally, like, he's like, you're in trouble. You don't know who I know or whatever. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then he goes out in the hall, and the kid is still standing in the hall, and he just turns and looks at the kid and goes, oh, yeah. I was like, what the fuck, dude? It's like so insane. And then the other thing is, did you notice earlier on, when they're finding out, they're having a police briefing and they're kind of putting together the pieces of like who Big Fate is and who his underlings and stuff. And there's a guy, Gary Jenkins, which is one of Big Fate's underlings, and his nickname is G.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, in that initial police briefing, Nicolas Cage is like, yeah, this Gary Jenkins, street name G, and he just starts fucking laughing. And then he does it like 4 other times. Like, he says G, every time he says G, he starts laughing. But he doesn't do it for, like, I think one of the other guy's street names is Midget, and then Big Fate. He doesn't laugh when he says their names. Only when he says G, he laughs every single time.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I picked up on that.
What is
It
he
was
doing?
who knows, man. Drugs. That's the answer, I guess, to this whole thing.
Right.
Real quick
just
about
like
about the Biloxi thing too is this. It's like Nick Cage's character's got this kid with him who's a witness for this murder, right? To finger these other guys, G and Big Fate and everything. So now Biloxi is in Mississippi. It's not even in fucking Louisiana. So he's supposed to be transporting this witness, and he's like, all right, we're going to take a ride. I got to go see somebody. He goes out of the state of Louisiana, out of the city of New Orleans, out of Louisiana into Mississippi to Biloxi with this fucking witness. And that's like a thing. Like, that's like I having done a lot of traveling down in that part of the country, it's like, I'm like, Biloxi. I'm like, wait, he's not even in fucking Louisiana anymore. I don't think.
No, I think they
reference.
I think they make reference to it's like an hour outside of New Orleans because like you're a Biloxi kid. It's like it's an hour away, or he tells her on the phone I'm an hour away or something like that. It might have something to do with maybe like gambling's legal in some states and not in others. But like still, this kid is transporting the witness is their only link to the crime because at this point. He supposedly witnessed the crime, but they got no DNA. They got no other evidence at all. No gun, no murder weapons, nothing except for him. And then, of course, right on cue, he's there for 5 minutes, and he already loses the kid.
Yeah, out of state too, and that's like the point I was trying to make. It's like all the actions in New Orleans, right? He's supposed to transport this kid inside the city, right, somewhere to like another place in New Orleans. He drives an hour into a different state with this fucking guy, and it's like, and then loses him, and you never hear from him again. That's it. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, he like flees to England.
Yeah.
Something I believe is what they end up saying. I know, especially me, I'm jumping all over the place, man. But this is just one of those kind of movies, like my conversation about it probably makes about as much sense as the movie. But one of the things too, like what I kept thinking in the movie, like early on, he goes to that fancy apartment that his girlfriend Frankie is living in, and it's like one of these luxury places with a doorman and all this shit. So clearly, she's a high-end prostitute. Clearly, she's making a lot of money, and he's up there talking to her initially in the first scene with them together. He's like, "You got anything for me?" He gives her a little bit of coke or whatever. And then she gets a call on the phone, and she lets the answer machine pick up, and it's one of her quote-unquote clients who's like, "Hey, if you're free tonight, meet me over at this motel." And Nicolas Cage makes reference to like, "I can't afford that kind of motel," and she's like, "But I can." So I'm just thinking to myself, why is she with him? Like, she's clearly, makes way more money than him. Like, why is she even wasting her time with like a loser like that? That part didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, maybe he's got something over on her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean they don't allude to that, but I mean, sure, yeah, that could be just part of it that they don't really allude to. But it's like I don't know. I feel like she could do, she doesn't need this guy.
Yeah.
Well, she could definitely do better.
Now that's the difference between an Abel Ferrara treatment and this film, because Abel Ferrara, like, he Harvey Keitel's character is in the shit with everyone. Like, he's like really wallowing in the gutters, man. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
He had his lady where he was giving drugs to, but she was like a basically a crack whore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
exactly.
It's like, she's all cracked out and strung out and, sketchy, and I don't know, just the whole. This movie's not as sketchy as Ferrara's film, but it's sleazier in like a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Hey, nothing against Nicolas Cage. I'm not exactly, easy on the eyes either. But I mean, you would figure she could do better than him.
Yeah, maybe he's got
especially she's making more money.
Maybe he's got a big dick. I don't know. Like that's who knows?
A big schwanz.
Yeah. But the thing with Abel Ferrara though, it's like, you watch Bad Lieutenant, you watch like any number of his other films, and like I said earlier, especially if you live or have lived or grew up in or whatever in New York City, you're like, oh yeah, I walked right by that guy the other day. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's like this realism to his films that also blend, especially, in Bad Lieutenant, there's a lot of this like Catholic, like ominous imagery in there too, where he mixes, and that's common to a lot of his films, this kind of like Roman Catholic, Italian, New York, like all that sort of stuff mixes together. And then also just Abel Ferrara's like sketchy lifestyle,
Right.
like a good friend of mine, his family owns a coffee place in Little Italy called La Bella Ferrara. And
okay.
my buddy's father is friends with Abel Ferrara. And,
really?
they used to hang out, party, like, so he's like the real deal, man. Like I guess Abel Ferrara lives in Rome now, but like at the time, all through this 80s and 90s and up till, whatever, maybe 20 years ago, he lived in Little Italy and used to like be a fixture like in that area and go to the coffee shop, and my buddy Nick would see him and almost every day, And
that's cool.
And that's him. That's the guys in his films are facets of who Abel Ferrara actually is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And actually, have you ever seen the film The Blackout by Abel Ferrara?
I've never seen The Blackout. No.
Man, it's hard to find. I have a DVD of it because back in the day when I lived in Greenpoint, there was this awesome video store there called Photo Play. They had everything. And the guy who owned it was like really cool. I was in there all the time. And that was before streaming really was a thing, before like Netflix and all this other stuff. And
yeah,
I used to like go in there and hang out with this guy. We'd talk and he'd recommend movies. And then he had The Blackout for rent. And then ultimately Photo Play closed because, in a world where you can watch anything any time of day online, sadly people didn't really have much use for going to a video store anymore. So his store went under and he sold off most of his stock. And I bought the copy of The Blackout that he had. And,
okay. It's never been reissued?
Not that I know of, man. It's everyone I've known. Very few people have actually no one that I know has seen it besides me and maybe one or two other people. And people have told me that they try to find it and they can't find it anywhere. And it's got Matthew Modine's in it, Beatrice Dahl, the guy who plays Manny from Scarface, that guy, whatever his name is.
Okay.
Claudia Schiffer is in it. Dennis Hopper. It's a fucking awesome, very, very dark, desperate movie. And if you can find it anywhere, I highly recommend it. Or maybe like one of these, when I come up there or something, we go watch it or something. Maybe the three of us will watch it or talk about it.
Yeah, what year did it come out? Do you know?
I'm going to look it up right this minute.
I just looked on IMDb and I don't even see it listed on it.
Really? The Blackout.
Yeah, I'm just check all results. Hang on.
Abel Ferrara. Yeah, here we go. The Blackout, 1997.
Okay.
Abel Ferrara. A debauched Hollywood movie actor tries to piece together one wild night in Miami years earlier, which remains a drug-induced blur, and soon finds out that some questions about his past are best left unanswered. So yeah, even in this movie, there's a piece of Abel Ferrara in the main character. You know, Matthew Modine is this actor who is, very, he's just one of these guys, like L.A., doing coke, doing all this sleazy shit, and then cleans his act up, and, but then there's like a period of time where he doesn't remember anything, right? There's like a blackout.
Okay.
That's the title. All he knows is that it took place in, that it some one night that he has this no recollection of took place in Miami. And at the time, Beatrice Dahl was like his lady, and they were gonna get married and all this stuff. And he starts going into therapy, and then he discovers what happened in that lost time, and it's super fucking dark, man. Like, I'll leave it at that. You know what I mean? It's
all right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds great.
I'm like, once again, man, I'm not sure where, if it's. I've been told that it's hard to find.
All right, hang on.
Wait, it says watch on Prime Video.
Yeah, too. You can rent it on Prime for $2.99. I just seen that too. You can rent it for $2.99 or buy it digitally for $9.99 on Amazon
dude,
Prime.
That must be like relatively new, because over the last few years, people have been like, "Where do you find this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I have a copy of it if you want to come over and watch it with me." But it's like, all right. Yeah, there you go, man. Okay. And dude, and anyone else who's listening, do yourself a favor. If you like if you've made it this far into this episode and you're still listening out there, and you're interested in any of the shit that we're talking about, I want to recommend one of my favorite films, The Blackout by Abel Ferrara. And apparently we just discovered that you can rent it on Prime. So there you go. It's $2. How can you go wrong for $2?
Or anybody who's listening or might still be listening can also go to your apartment and watch it with you. Right?
Yeah, if you live in Middlesex County, New Jersey, or close by, and you want to come over, I'm here. We can watch.
Bring some good coffee.
Yeah, we can watch it. I have a DVD.
That's nice of you, man. I don't want anybody coming here. So.
Well, these days I take it where I can get it, man. It's like, like I said, it's been a rough 14 months, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, dude, trust me. I know. I'm with you, man. my few trips down there to record episodes and hang out have been, the height of my social life for the past 14 months.
Totally, bro. So just to wrap it up with Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. What's your final? What if you like kind of reduce this whole thing to a few words? What would you recommend this to anyone? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you dislike it? Do you feel neutral? Like, what's your take on this whole thing?
I like it a lot, but I wouldn't say it's like a great piece of film. I think it's like the same reason I like a lot of like slasher movies and like from the 80s and stuff like that. It's a fun watch. You know what I mean? If you're the kind of guy who wants to, have a few beers and just watch something that you don't have to think about too much, and you like violence and drug abuse and stuff like that. I mean, I think
if you like violence,
maybe the type of guy. Yeah, maybe the type of guy who wants to chop up a lion or something. This movie's for you. It's fun. Correct me if I'm wrong here, though. For as crazy as this movie is, totally unhinged, there's no nudity in this movie.
You're right, actually. And there are many opportunities where there could have been some nudity, But yeah,
yeah,
there's no nudity.
Well, there's like an ass shot when with the initial scene.
Oh, and he's hassling that young girl there?
Yeah, when he basically fucks her in front of her boyfriend, and then he tries to like sneak away so he doesn't get brought up on drug charges, and he like shoots his gun in the air while he's banging her on the side of the car.
Yeah, all right. So
a little preview of what you're in for.
Yeah, so there's like a little bit of like there's some ass crack, but no tits or anything like that. Okay, yeah.
No, but you would think this movie would be like chock full of that kind of stuff. But like, I realized that like halfway through my second watch today, I'm like, wow, there's like all this crazy shit happening, but there's like, there's no real nudity in it. I thought that was kind of bizarre. But that was a weird choice, actually, to not have it in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I enjoyed it, dude. I thought it was a lot of fun. I don't know if I ever would have went back and watched this movie again if you didn't randomly text me a couple weeks ago. I was like, what do you think of this movie? So I enjoyed the hell out of it, man. I think obviously the Bad Lieutenant from 1992, I think is a better film. Still crazy and unhinged. But this was just, like I said, I think it falls somewhere between a grindhouse movie, and I think you're referencing the Italian stuff that like tries to be American, like a lot of the Argento and Fulci stuff, which I love that stuff. Yeah, man, I liked it. I'm glad you brought it up to do. I think it'd be cool to do some more stuff like this down the road. Like, what's your assessment of it?
For a long time, I disliked this movie. Like, I was like, I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, what the fuck is this, man? Like, I already have The Bad Lieutenant, you know what I mean? My mind was closed to this film. Okay. And then,
right.
Like I said, as time went by, I started thinking about it. I'm like, I mean, let's revisit this. And that's when you and I started texting about it. And then I remembered certain scenes in there that were like, yeah, that's interesting. Maybe I'd want to see that again. And then when I rewatched it, there was even more scenes that I'd almost forgotten about that were like insane. And I guess like the second, because I watched it twice, both of those times I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I had to let go of it being called The Bad Lieutenant, because if it had a different title, it would be way more easier for me to have liked it back in 2009, or whenever this came out. So yeah, I recommend it if you're after some sleazy movie, which, if you're into violence and, drug abuse and, sleaziness and you like Nicolas Cage and all that. And, and if you're a Fairuza Balk fan, you have to watch, I mean, Fairuza Balk all day, man. Like anything she's in, I'll watch at least once. And
yeah, I endorse that.
All day Fairuza Balk.
Yeah. Yeah, and her small scene in this, although there is no nudity, is still pretty good.
She's almost naked in the movie, so that's it is what it is. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's like I can't recommend it in the way I would recommend other types of films, but I recommend it if you have very specific things you like that fall into that area of a sketchy movie, sleazy, violence,
right.
Drug abuse, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. You know what I mean? It was just fun. It wasn't a serious movie you had to think about or whatever, but it was. I think it's interesting to think. What some people out there think of it.
And one of the things is that I guess even though they're not even remotely the same film, you have to kind of look at the characters, because they're the only thing that really is the closest things are the two cop characters, because they're both corrupt cops. In Abel Ferrara's film, Keitel actually gets redeemed at the end. You know what I mean? Like he sets that one guy free or whatever, and then he gets shot by the guys he owes money to, right? So, and that's like actually that's actually something in a lot of Ferrara's films where there's like there's some kind of like closure and reconciliation with the character, and but with the Nicolas Cage as the cop, there's an appearance of him transcending himself, but the reality is that nothing's really changed in his life.
I was going to say, they allude to that with they show him getting the award at the end, and then Eva Mendes, they show her in the audience while he's receiving the award, and she's pregnant, and then they show her pulling up in front of their looks like they bought a little house in suburban New Orleans, and like everything's cool, and he's cool, and then like his next stop is back to the Gator retreat to pull some more of his shenanigans.
That same work that he did, the same trip that he ran on that other girl, and her boyfriend. It's like you get the impression that that's what he does, like in his spare time, his hassle, like young people, you know.
Yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, he doesn't quite get the same kind of redemption. You know, it looks like he's back to his old shenanigans.
And he survives. And he survives. Yet he lives unredeemed. And Harvey Keitel's version of the character, well, different guy completely, but his character has reconciliation and is killed and doesn't live.
Right.
So that I don't know if that's a point to bring up, but that is something I noticed at the end of the film, because the first rewatch, I wasn't sure what happened to him at the end. You know, I'm like, oh, interesting, he lives.
Yeah, it ends with him and the guy that he rescued initially for the beginning of the movie, sitting in front of like at an aquarium, and then he's like, "Do fish dream?" And then the movie kind of ends.
Yeah. But that I would like to, that whole like trippy aspect of it I would have welcomed more of that. You know what I mean?
Me too.
Yeah. But all in all,
there was go ahead. Sorry.
No, just all in all, enjoyable. You know, within certain parameters, very, very enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad we you brought it up the other day, and we went back and tackled that one. It was kind of on a whim, like we didn't, so it wasn't very planned out or whatever. But I thought it was cool. I mean, we go back and rewatch that movie, which I probably never would have watched again.
So what were you going to say? You were going to say something?
I don't know. I don't remember. It wasn't very important.
Okay. Well, thanks for hanging in there, guys, and. We'll let us know what you think of this. If you are interested in checking this movie out, it's on IMDb TV for free with commercials. And I don't know, somehow I never actively signed up for this thing, but it's like it shows up in my Amazon Prime account. Maybe I hit yes to something, but it doesn't cost anything to have IMDb TV. So if you have a Prime account, I believe it's a free add-on, and you just have to sit through commercials every now and then. But if you want to watch this movie, quote unquote, for free, you can watch it just how I said you could. So
yeah, that's how I want the same way. And the commercials are a little annoying, but it's not like censored or cut or edited or anything like that. It's the full deal of the movie.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And I'll talk to you guys next week. And Randy and I will talk to you next month. Take care.